Good morning, folks. I'm Abel Zill. This is Ask Zill Live, which is my live stream where I'm here to answer your questions about building tiny houses and building in general. It is Sunday morning in the sunny, for a change, Pacific Northwest. There are birds singing. It did frost last night, so it's not really warm yet, but I'm still really thrilled to have a little bit of sunshine. Maybe let's take a look at that. And I can show you a little bit of what I'm up to here. I'll turn the camera around. Here's a new design that I'm working on right now. It's almost done. This is called the fuchsia. It's really beautiful. It's jammed inside of my shelter, so it's really hard to see the details. But I'll show you. Window trims on. No less. The sun makes the backlighting really bad. Yeah, look at this. We did a stack. Little, traditionalism here going on. But I have a lot of respect for the woodworking craft as it's evolved over time, and really, even though tiny houses are kind of this new fad, there's nothing new about building houses and doing woodwork. But let's see. The first thing I wanted to get started with today is I wanted to first answer a question that I got. I thought was a very good question. This came in over the comment on my YouTube channel, and the question was, what do you do with the waste that comes out of the tiny house plumbing system? And so there's a couple different ways that I could frame that, because this person didn't specify it. That's great. It kind of opens the question up a little bit. If you have a flush toilet, then the waste that comes out of your tiny house pipe is, full-on sewage. So you really have a couple choices there. Actually, there's three choices. If you're in a city, it is normal to hook to the city sewer. Tiny houses in cities may not always be permitted to do that, but that will change. And there are some that are, actually, that I know of. Some of mine are hooked to city sewer, and by with full knowledge of the city. So that's great. City sewer is a way to deal with a whole bunch of different people's shit and wastewater all in the same spot. And in a dense populated area like a city, there's really not a whole lot better way to do it these days. Composting. I'm going to go on to the next version of that, and it's if you have toilet waste coming out of a tiny house, toilet included with the other stuff, it can go into a septic system. And a septic system is essentially a tank to catch waste in that separates the things that can't go out into a drain field, and then there is a drain field that allows the waste water to slowly dissipate some distance under the ground, so that by the time that it fully enters the watershed, it has the levels of bacteria have reduced enough that it works. So that's a gray water. Excuse me, that's a septic system. Those are very expensive to put in and permit, and they're highly regulated because bad septic systems have been notorious for contaminating groundwater. So, and the sanitation in the North America has evolved a lot since 1940s ish, and that's where a lot of our sanitation codes and permits and such originated. And it may seem expensive and annoying, and you pay all this money for your wastewater in the city, but really it has been a bit of a revolution and a success for having clean water, clean surface water, and clean drinking water. So then, if you have a flush toilet, you could also have like an RV style catch tank, but you have to pump that into another one of these kind of systems later. So I'm not really going to include an RV blackwater tank as part of our normal option. So on to wastewater. Commonly in the kind of tiny houses I build, the wastewater is just gray water. So gray water means, depending on who you're asking, it can mean different things. But if it's a kitchen sink and a shower and like a clothes washer, that can be included with gray water. Although modern gray water law often excludes kitchen sink waste from a gray water stream or permitted gray water system. But that's usually more if you're living in a city. However, if you're dealing with small amounts of gray water, you can again run that into a septic system or a city sewer connection, or you can catch it in a tank and you can build your own gray water dissipating system, which basically is a really small version of a septic system, but it's much easier to build. And mostly you're putting it into a perforated pipe that goes underground or that empties into kind of a filtered catch basin so that the water can't freely flow into the surface water. And I'm explaining a brief version of this, but surface water situation, surface water, and or you may get fined for doing that. So just keep that in mind. Rules vary everywhere. So the waste that goes down the pipe, and I believe the person asked about also if food goes down the kitchen sink. I really, in a tiny house, if you're running a small gray water system, try to use a screen to keep large particulates out. It just doesn't have the capacity of a large septic system or the city sewer. So if you're running it into your own little homemade system, you'll have to clean your system, literally dig up the pipes and clean it, or put in a new drain pipe every so often you'll have to do that less often if you keep particulate waste out of the system, and if you don't dump stuff like bacon grease down the drain, because that's a notorious drain clogger. There's a few others, but you combine a little bit of hair and a little bit of bacon grease and a little bit of onion peels, and that stuff makes really nice clogs. I've been plumbing for quite a long time, maybe 15 years or so, independent of doing tiny houses, but I've done it always as a part of my building, and I've also just kind of been a handy person at points in the past, working around town and helping people out with their projects. So plumbing, done plenty of it. So I'm going to move on. I see some questions here. Thanks, guys. Let's see. Christy Stone asks, I'm thinking of having my dad build me a tiny house. He's a residential contractor. Do you have tips, resources on lightweight build materials? That's a good question. Saving weight is possible. I would recommend using techniques to be, if it's tiny house on a foundation, you kind of know what to do. If it's tiny house on a trailer, use the techniques that will get you the strength you need, and don't worry too much about weight the first time around. If I have people that say, I want a tiny house, but I want to pull it with, a RAV4 SUV, like a tiny SUV. It just doesn't work out very well. They're large objects, they're pretty heavy. If it's your first time, don't worry too much about saving weight. Maybe leave out the stone fireplace. Drywall can be a little heavy inside. There's other options, but otherwise, don't worry about it too much. Do what you know to be structurally solid. I use a lot of rather light building techniques, but I use techniques in my shop that I have invented, and nobody else really uses them. So we're using kind of a hybridized, curved skin glued. We're using an adhered skin-on-frame type structure, and it might look like framing sometimes, but it really doesn't. It performs better, so I can use lighter materials. So don't do what I do. It's astonishingly strong, but don't do what I do until I write a book or something. I don't know. So Rob Gilmore asks, quick question for you about wiring a house. Do you wire your homes with 30 amp or 50 amp? Powering the service panel? That is a great question. I do both, and sometimes I do something a little different, but the most common small wiring schemes, and they're kind of influenced by the RV/marine world, but it makes for a pretty easy, because tiny houses are movable, it makes the understanding of the electrician who puts in your outlet there, it makes sense to them, right? Because you say, I want an RV hookup on a out in the yard, and they'll say, oh, okay, I know what to do for that. So that's why you can engineer electrical systems with any capacity you want, over any distance you want, and that is its own thing. So yes, 30 amp is common. 30 amp 120 volts is common in RV world. 30 amp 240, the 4-pole connector is a much better system to use. I use it when I can, but again, if people aren't really sure, if they're having an electrician install an outlet, they aren't really sure, then I specify the 30 amp 120 volts that's common with RVs, or the 50 amp 240 volt for a greater capacity that you can do a 100 amp panel. It's really all up to what you need. But most commonly, tiny houses are pretty small and efficient, and a 50 amp electrical circuit can serve a fully electric tiny house, unless you just have this enormous heater or something. So yeah, the answer is yes, all of the above and then some. Okay, so I'm going to keep answering questions because there's a lot of them. Joyce McIntyre asks, love the tiny birdhouse you built for the woman in Colorado. Is it possible to show on YouTube again? I wasn't able to add to my favorites. I don't have video of the little bird that went to went to Wyoming and then Colorado and then Wyoming. I don't have that one. There are lots of little birds. I just finished one that went to Pennsylvania, and I do have video footage of that, but I haven't put it together yet because I'm a carpenter and not a videographer, so it takes me a long time to get those things up so you can see them. So yes, eventually. The only little bird one that I have, my first little bird, I have really kind of washed out iPhone video of it, and one that I call Cynthia's Little Bird. It's because they went to a very sweet woman named Cynthia, and that I have a little tour of that. But there's I built a few little birds actually, so there's more of that coming. So here's my thumb because I'm scrolling through your messages. It's just on the side of my screen here. It's a very little screen, but oh boy. So this is again a kind of a big question. Robert Bingler asks, need more details on where to purchase the best trailers and how to attach the floor system. Attaching the floor, there's different methods for creating a floor system depending on your needs and how much insulation you need. Okay, I'll continue reading his question. Any resource recommendations on this? Let me think about that. My favorite go-to for like simplified, well-said building instructions that have to do with trailer and like wall attachment stuff is Dee Williams' book Go House Go. I think it's Go House Go 2 or something by now, but Dee Williams is great. She's like super engaging person to talk to hear, but she also is a great writer and manages to like sum things up to their essential quality, and she's also just like her own thing. You won't get a weird spin, or she doesn't encourage you to go to any particular spot. She just tells it like it is, and I love that about Dee. So what trailers do you use to build? I have my trailers custom made by a trailer maker that's local to me, and so I get them in all different specifications, sizes, weights, widths, spacing, and so I just kind of have custom trailers built. And there are lots of good trailer manufacturers out there, but it depends on where you are, because one close to you will be the best deal. There are tiny house specific trailer makers, and they tend to, I'll just say this, they tend to mark their trailers up like 25% because of the tiny house revolution, and somehow it compels them to like price up a little bit, and they'll say this is the best thing in the world, but there's actually lots of good trailer makers out there, so you just have to search around a little bit. But if you or to write me back and tell me where you are. I can give you a couple recommendations. Robert Bingler also asks, have you ever considered diagonal framing? I'm sure I have in my fever dreams. I frame every which way when needs, but there's a darn good reason for, because of the shape of a typical wall in a house, a tiny house, doesn't matter, of turning the framing members vertical because they have the best span characteristic. So engineering wise, that's the most economical use of wood and has great strength for what you're putting in there. So there may be a form of diagonal framing that I don't know, like a double crossed, anyway, but it's with the kind of structures that and the sheathing that are typically used in tiny houses, a lot of extra framing techniques aren't really needed, and people can use basically a 2x4 stick built technique to get their framing together. There's some additional attachment stuff that you have to take into account when you're building on a trailer base than if you're on a foundation, but I'll leave that to you guys for now. So let's see. Questions are still coming. I'm gonna though cut to my first thing that I want to talk about here with you guys, and I want to talk a little bit about because we talked about the wastewater and gray water, so I'm going to put a check next to that. I'm going to save trailer frames and insulation for one where I actually have one on hand to show you what I'm doing. Again, there's lots of ways to do that, so I'm saving trailer frames and insulation. Again, there's many methods existing in the world. D. Williams' book, Go House Go, is a good reference for you. Well, while we're talking about it, Mary Morningstar asked, do you think the new, stronger aluminum trailers are good for tiny houses? Imho, in my honest opinion, maybe. But steel is, I think, still much more compelling, and here's why. Aluminum has a high strength-to-weight ratio. It's used when people need to get the maximum capacity out of a trailer, and they're also hauling it around a lot, and they want to save a little on fuel for the weight of the trailer. Aluminum, however, has bad repetitive stress. It basically cracks after a while at its stress points, and there are some really good aluminum makers out there, but you will pay through the nose for that, maybe twice as much as a steel trailer frame. So if that sounds like fun to you, go for it. But I don't think it's necessary in tiny house, and I think it could actually be structurally a little more difficult to deal with because it doesn't respond as well to repetitive stress. So steel is just has incredible tensile strength and incredible ability to deal with repetitive motion. So without stress cracking. So yeah, steel, and it's the most affordable material of that strength for trailers that we have. If you're building on a trailer, that guy's going really fast. There's a kid down the road that rides this Ducati or something, and he makes an incredible amount of noise, and I kind of hope he doesn't crash and kill himself because he just went by going about 95 miles an hour. That Ducati is a motorcycle, by the way. There's kind of motorheads out where I live. I'm not sure totally why. It's like a farm area, but it happens to have a lot of like motorheads around. And not that I don't love certain things about cars and even motorcycles, I suppose. I'm not a motorcycle person, but I don't know. It seems like a really noisy way to burn a lot of fuel. And there's funner things to do in life. Although going for a nice drive, I guess, is one of them. But you can like have just as much excitement riding a mountain bike down a set of stairs in town or something. That's really exciting. Holy crap! And you can break your neck doing that too. Oh, anyway, yeah. If you want extreme sports, all you have to do is I don't know, like try to walk Great Danes that are. Yeah, they'll drag you. It's like very exciting. Catching pigs, catching piglets is the most amazing extreme sport. basically this animal that's like 1/3 your weight, when you finally jump on top of it and grab it, it can actually like drag you around the field in a circle, and eventually it kind of like, you know, it was like, okay, this thing got me, and you pick it up and try to walk away with it, and it screams so loud. We had piglets, and we had to change which pen they were in and carry them across the farm, and it was just absolutely hilarious. We were all in tears because it sounds like they're being murdered, and they're just getting carried, and that's it. But they really don't want to be carried. You know, they're pigs. Once they get older, then they're smart, and they come and they're very smart, and they're playful, and they'll come hang out with you. So it changes. When they're piglets, they all run away from you. When they're smart, they come and they kind of, sometimes they'll headbutt you, and mostly they want food, or sometimes they just want to play. The pigs, I would run around with the grown-up pigs, and they would chase me around in circles, and they thought that was really fun. They would get all excited, and when they get really big, then they get excited, but they get tired, so they're like, you guys go. I'm gonna sit here because really I'd rather eat and sit on my butt. They actually sit on their butts like a dog or something. It's really funny. So onward. I want to talk a little bit about fasteners. Because there is a heck of a lot of fasteners, and worse or better, whichever way you want to look. I see it as better. The diversity of fasteners in the past, let's say probably decade, maybe 15 years, in the history of people using things like screws and nails and stuff, has just blossomed. It's become this like, it went from like one little stalk to like this tree of like different kinds of fasteners, and like the engineering is amazing. It's just amazing, and what these fasteners can do and the variety of them. So that makes it also confusing because there's so much new technology with fasteners. People are like, wow, what does this one do, and when do I use this one? And so here we go. We're gonna go pick out a couple. The first thing that you may notice about fasteners is that there's a lot more screws than there used to be. So it's really common to use an impact driver. I'll just start right from the basics. This is an impact driver. It spins when it has no load on it, but when you put it on a screw, it all of a sudden has to work a little harder, and it has a rotary hammer device inside of it, and it hits the screw repeatedly, and that's why they work so well. If you're not used to them, they feel kind of weird, and like, why don't you just use a drill to drive screws? And people did that for quite a while, long time actually. People have been using drills since there were drills to drive screws. I'm sure the old carpenters were like, why don't you use a crank, a brace? And then some guy with a drill and a screwdriver bit that he sawed off of a brace, chucked in, was like, haha, well look at this, and the whole carpenters probably like threw things at him and made fun of him for a long time. And now look how it is. You can still use a screwdriver, but the times that I use a hand screwdriver are so rare that I carry one single screwdriver with interchangeable bits. I love this thing. This is actually an insulated screwdriver for working on like 10,000 volt electrical panels, but I don't work on those because I actually am not a fan of high voltage electrical. It's a fabulous art. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go pick out a few screws. Trying to turn this around. And here's what we're going to do. Let's pick a few of these. These are self-drilling screws. I'm going to pick the ones that I think are the most important to know about. These are used most commonly for metal. There are special forms that are used for plastic, but we don't use a lot of plastic in this building. So here's the self-drilling screws. There's various forms of lag bolts. You may have heard of lag bolts, but here is an amazingly evolved form of lag bolt. Different lengths around here, but this is it's a knockoff. This comes from my supplier, Tacoma Screw Products. They're wonderful to me. I'm not plugging anybody. I'm just saying that they're good people. But they do sell good fasteners. This is a knockoff of the GRK technology. GRK is, what does GRK stand for? Let's find out. Here's GRK screws. I think they're German engineered, and I feel they have some of the best engineering going. So Yeah, well, you know, they're making them all over the world, but it's, I'm going to grab some of those. These are trim screws. They have a really small head, beautiful engineering also. So I've got those, and then I'm going to show you the most usual type of screws that you might find these days. So let's lay the screws out, and then kind of how to use them. So then, these are my screw boxes. These are my carpenters run off with the other sizes, but that's okay, you know. Here's one that's actually full. This one's named Fascination, actually. But this is my box of exterior wood screws these days, and they have a countersunk head, which allows them to sink in flush with the wood, which is usually what you want. And these are what some people consider to be kind of standard wood, like assembly type screws. They're not really strong. I see I'm getting a bad signal out here, so I'm going to wander back in. But I'm going to bring my bin of exterior grade screws and put it right on the back of the workbench. And then I'm going to find some of the interior screws and show you those too. I think I have them in, wait, I have a very special screw bin here. Hope I'm not driving you crazy with all this zooming around. There we go. I'll just grab a few of these so you can see. Okay, so screws. And then there's going to be some other kinds that you may encounter. There you go. So here's what we'll do. Now the fun part is I have to get you set up so you can see what I'm doing. And that is tricky. Oh, that's pretty good actually, except that it doesn't want... Okay, I'm going to lower you and it's going to be a little jerky, so hang tight. There we go. Okay, screws. Can you see me? Yeah. We have the screws. We call these yellow screws, but that's just because they're kind of yellow. Self-drilling screws, trim head screws, and a lag bolt. And I'm going to get a chunk of wood or two so I can kind of show you how variously used. Let's talk about screw guns a little bit. You'll probably have one of these if you're building a tiny house or any project. And this one happens to be in Milwaukee. It's a little. You might have a bigger one. Here's, well, this is not a driver actually, but it's a drill. This is kind of the normal size, but they're getting smaller. And the reason is that the new brushless motors that most of these kind of things use are very powerful for their size and weight. So you kind of don't need a lot more. Although, you know, a little weight sometimes is good in a tool, but I won't go on about that. So then you will need bits. And let's really quickly go through the main bits that you'll see. This one is astonishingly popular, and it's called Phillips. Has 4 little wings and a kind of a tapered point. My camera's not focusing on it very well at all. There it is. I gotta fool my camera into focusing. That's a Phillips bit, and I actually use a drywall pattern. But you don't have to worry about it. Just get number 2 Phillips. Number 2. There's different sizes. Number 2 is what all construction screws typically use. Somebody will correct me and say, "Oh, I have ones with number 1 in there." There's like the ones that have a hybrid square drive in the middle. But just regular Phillips is very useful. So screws. The funny thing about Phillips is it was made to not hold onto the screw too tight. And you might think, what the heck? Why? It was to prevent breakage or stripping the threads in a manufacturing situation. I don't know when that was. It was quite a long time ago. you know, a long time meaning is probably like mid-century, last century, that this kind of screw was, or this kind of drive system was invented, but it prevents too solid of a connection. If you want a solid connection, then you switch to other things like square drive. I don't use square drive too much because they stick in the screws, but here's another version that has the properties of square drive but doesn't stick, and it's called, people call it a star drive. And these come in all different sizes, which is a pain because one bit looks like it might fit the screw, and then you try it and you realize, oh, I need the T20 instead of T25 or the T30 or whatever. But it has a six-pointed little driver, and these are absolutely wonderful. They can attain high torque. They wear really well. You know, it's really rare to strip a star drive out. So they're used on bigger screws typically, but you can find them in all kinds of stuff. And actually all my exterior screws are star drive, like that. Okay, here we go. Let's just drive a screw. I can tell you, you know, how to use these. These would be most commonly used, like if I was attaching this. Let's say I'm attaching a piece of plywood. Let me just find one. Unless I have plywood everywhere, typically. Okay, folks, I know you can hear me, but you can't see me. I like it. I'm going to do incognito from now on. So say you're attaching a piece of plywood to this piece of wood. Well, you could just take this is a 1 1/4, which might be okay for a light fastening. This is 1/2-inch plywood, and you can start it by kind of holding it straight on, and you have to drive your drill right from the back. If you push on the handle and torque to the side, it's going to pop out, and that's a pain in the butt. So here we go. I've done this a million times, so I'm going to try to do it badly, if that makes sense. I'm just going to like, whoa, I didn't hold on to it. How about that? See, I'm going to hold on to it. Okay. Well, I did it badly, but it worked anyway. So it sucked down. But what commonly happens is if you use a longer screw through the material that you put on, you will get this thing that happens where the screw doesn't suck what you're wanting to put on down tight. Sometimes it won't anyway, even though, well, this one is doing it because it's stripping out its threads in the plywood. So you can just keep driving, or you can pre-drill. It's a fabulous option. And here is a drill with a taper bit. It's a little long for what I'm doing, so I'm going to drill off to the side. But I made a hole that, actually this hole's a little big and it clears the screw threads completely. So sometimes you don't want quite that much clearance, but in this case it works fine for plywood. Now there's no way the screw can hold that wood up off and it pulls it down really tight. So pre-drilling is a really great thing. I use these long bits. They have a countersink, but you know, for just construction, like I'm not finished work, I will, I'm guiding the drill with my thumb. I'm just going to drill part way, because the screw's not as long as the wood, right? And so I'm drilling part way. I also know this won't split. And there it goes. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something else. I hope this is interesting, you guys. This is actually, like, people spend a lot of time trying to screw things together when they first start building. It hopefully is useful to you. Tell me if you want to see something else. If you're going to screw something like, this is a piece of cedar that's tight grained. See what's going on here. Things with straight, beautiful, tight grain will split pretty easily. So let's see, I'm going to put this screw right through it. And you know, I might be successful. Or not. I don't know. I was successful. That's hilarious. But I'm going to put another screw in line. And gosh, see, I can't. I'm trying to fail, you guys. I want to fail. So let's just try it again. How about a different screw? We'll put an exterior type screw through. So I'm switching over to my star drive. Fits that. Okay. My screw gun, you change bits by pulling up on the ring, or actually I think you can just push it in and it locks. There are other type of bit holders like this that accept the little ones. They tend to jam when you use with an impact driver, so I have to pull the bit out with my pliers. Like that. But you know, it's all good. Impact drivers are kind of hard on some bit holders. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to fail here. Overdriving. See, the screw will keep sucking. It'll actually go right through the wood. Ha! Alright, so like that. The screws are powerful, and cedar's soft. So I'm not somehow able to make this piece of wood split. Must be really good. If you keep driving the screws along one line in the grain, you can. But so a good thing to do if you're driving screws into something that is splitty is to pre-drill. Now I'm drilling, and I'm including the countersink there, and I'm going to put a nice long 3-inch screw in. This will actually screw it to my workbench. But, you know, just figuring it out. When I'm driving, I'm using really constant pressure and I'm pressing directly down in the line that the screw is going. And that keeps everything going the way you want. It's really common if you are driving and you fall off of your screw like this to jam the drill or the screw bit into your hand, and that doesn't hurt. I've actually put a screw bit right through my finger once. Like, it didn't come out the other side, but almost did. But I've actually had very few workshop injuries, so that is one of the few that I've had. I was driving screws into a metal roof, and just the bit kind of stabbed me, even though it's not very sharp. Sometimes I set the screw up and then kind of get my hand away from it, because when you're bearing down hard, flip off, it'll go downward. So be careful. Goes without saying, I suppose. You can kind of hurt yourself with anything, but there's more things in a workshop that you can hurt yourself with. This, okay, let's oh, this is a good one. The lag here is basically a large square drive. Again, we can, if you're drilling for something like this, I tend to use a much larger bit to pilot it. So let's do that. Sorry, I'm moving you guys so I can get the bit out of my drawer. This is fabulous. Yeah, this is I have this like extra long bit that goes with this these kind of screws. Move you back. Now my tripod is being fussy. There we go. Okay. So say I want to take this apart. Put in a leg, this is a construction leg. It is rated to basically bolt pieces of framing together. Using a technique that's really common when people have worked around drills for a little while is you kind of stick the drill bit in and you hold it straight, and then you grab the chuck with your hand and it closes. You can get it kind of off center, so you might have to redo it, and then you grab it and give it a crank. This drill's losing its clutch. This is very old, but when they're new, they lock when you push on them. So I'm just gonna. So if you're drilling a really deep hole, you don't have to pull the drill out. I'm trying to get all the way through that so the screw can have have a good path. It'll drive a lot easier than if you're trying to. You can force drive these, but they take a bit of energy. My drill is up for it. My little drill is pretty powerful, but you might want to pre-drill. It'll help. So in this case, I'm going to use my bit holder here to hold the bit. I don't have a shorty bit holder. I just have this like 6-inch one, but it works. And here we go. Okay, so what I have done is like thoroughly bolted these to my workbench. Old style legs look like this. I only have an enormous one, but I'll show you. This one's like an 8-inch leg. And then there's a hex head. And these are still totally valid. But these GRK style legs are incredible. But depending on what you're specified to use, if you have plans that specify a certain kind of leg, then use them. The leg is considered a structural component, and there's a time and a place when you need to do it. So then there are. I'll touch on one more before I move on, and it's the self-drilling screws. These are fabulous. They won't typically. Little ones with sheet metal, you can hand drive, like just pushing it on the metal, and it'll pull its way through. But for most applications into metal, these are you need to pre-drill. So this particular, I think this is a number 12, or is kind of how it's known, and I use for a number 12. I'm moving you over again so I can get in here. A 3/16 drill bit. There it is. 3/16. To drill metal, use fairly high quality drill bits. Saves a lot of heartache. But I've gotten good. Actually, these little pocket sets. I carry one of these around. When I'm in the shop, I have a whole bunch of drill indexes, but the pocket set has held up for a long time. There's a bunch that have been replaced down here, but this is a little Milwaukee set. It's not bad. So let's put a screw in metal. That's a fun thing to do. So you can see how it goes. I need a piece of metal. So let's go find one. The most common place you'll use this is when you need to attach something to your trailer. Not necessarily your house. These are for smaller chores. Let's see if I have a piece of metal. I have this like metal catch area down here. That's roof metal. Robert Bingler asks, hammer drill versus impact wrench. You know what we're gonna do here is we will just. Well, I'm gonna see if I can access the trailer frame over here. I might just. Oh, the trailer frame is covered. Okay, lots of metal down here. Just have to get a piece. Welcome to my shop. It's crazy because it's a shop. There we go. That's rectangular tube. This is one of the projects that's underway. Haven't built a fortune cookie house for a while, but here it is. Looks like the rib cage of a whale right now. We'll be putting the sheathing on it Monday morning, and yeah, it's exciting. These houses are really fun to build. Kind of related to an A-frame idea. They feel like an A-frame. Okay, so here we go. So Robert, hammer drill versus impact wrench. That's a great question. Here, can I drive this thing? Since it's better just to use my hands. Hammer drill versus impact wrench. They're very similar beasts. An impact wrench is basically a larger version of a hammer drill that can deliver more rotational force on an impact. So to drive screws, you really don't want a big impact wrench. You'll snap your screw, you'll break the shafts of your screws. But if you're driving, if you're putting nuts and bolts. You know, they're typically used in automotive work um, because you are, needing a lot, needing a lot of torque. But you only need enough torque to do what you need to do with the screw, which is get it into the wood. And so I'm clamping this piece of metal down because it makes it much nicer to work on. When I'm drilling in metal, it's if a drill hangs up, it can spin the piece of metal around, which can cause cuts. And so it's metal, I'm going to clamp it down like that. Okay, I am going to dry drive this, which just means I'm going to not make a pilot dent. Let's drill hole. There it goes. If you bear down hard enough, the drill will cut all by itself. But I have a hole, and I think I have getting bits everywhere. Let's just put them back in my holder here. It's good to keep picking up your tools as you go. You'll get out a lot when you're building. Okay, this is called it's typically called a nut setter. If you go to a hardware store and you say, "Oh, do you have nut setters?" Or nut drivers, but it's just a small magnetic kind of a socket. Some people confuse bit holders and they'll drive, but there's like this is a bit holder, has like a little clamp of sorts, and this is a nut setter or whatever you want to call it. It has a magnet inside usually, and it's just the right depth for these kind of screws. So they're kind of the way to go. But a screw like this, so it doesn't have to cut its hole because the pilot already fits. So it's just gonna. So what happened here is that I must have got the wrong drill bit because I stripped out immediately. So that screw did not hold in the steel. So I'm going to swap drill bits. It should be, so one way to pick is I want the wings to just have to cut a little bit. So we're going to go down a size, or 2. Okay, so I'm down to 5. Okay, it's 5/32. Maybe that I need. Yeah. And I'm missing my 5/32 bit. So, of course, living in a workshop, I'm just going to grab the next index and see if it has one. We frequently go and buy the replacements that we need because the small bits get broken every so often. Okay, so the wings of that screw, I'm going to bring it closer, I'm just using the index as a measuring guide, don't fit in the 5/32 hole. That's what I want. I want it to be just a tiny bit small because the screw can do the rest. So let's do that. Hope this is interesting, guys. It is something you'll definitely use. Okay. It's pretty easy to break bits when you're drilling like that. You kind of like pop through the other side. Okay, so this time, yeah, that's more like it. The screw just fits, and so now the wings are drilling. Gosh, can you see that? Let's see if I can do this with one hand. The wings are drilling the hole right now. Okay, so they made it just the right size for the threads. And there we go. Like super secure. That is the way to do it. Self-drilling screws. If you're putting like a regular bolt into metal and you want it to bite, you have to drill a hole and tap it with a set of taps. I'll show you what those look like, but you might not have to get into that. Here's a set of taps. And these will put threads in metal. They're hardened steel and they have a great little T-handle. I won't get into tapping because that's machine work, but there are taps. You use these to cut threads into metal, and I have kinds for each sort of thread pitch. So the coarse pitches and the fine pitches. This is a really great set, and I think, what's underneath is the dies, which you use to thread rod. Oh my gosh. Again, fun stuff. You don't really need to get into that if you haven't built before. You don't need to have all of those tools. Okay, so let's come back. Hey, there you are. And I'm just going to shift things around a little bit here. So that is just a really brief primer on screws and common fasteners. I'm just turning around so there's not so much backlight. There's backlight everywhere. If I come up a little bit, yeah. And then the backlights are out of the way. Perfect. Yeah, so it's an impact driver. That's a drill. Oh, here's the drill that goes with my impact driver. It's a little lighter. These drills are actually a little under-powered. Not real, I don't know. I'm picky about tools. But then I'm building every day. I have been for dang near 20 years. So you get pickier as time goes on. So let's see. I'm going to go back and pick up the last couple of questions, and then maybe we can call it good, and we'll come back next time. Okay. Freewheelin' asks, I saw photos of your wheelchair-accessible tiny house in Oregon and love it. What did you do differently when building, and have you built any other accessible houses? That's the only one I built that was made wheelchair accessible throughout. I'm sure some others could be easily adapted. The ones with like ground level sleeping and such are much more like able to be used that way. But the main differences to meet ADA guidelines are, car just started out there, so I'm going to talk a little louder, there can't be large bumps or thresholds. They have to be easy to be rolled into and out of by a wheelchair. The doors usually have to have a grab type or a paddle type handle. The inner clearances, so that house is on a 10-foot wide trailer, and that made it quite easy to make it ADA compliant and wheelchair accessible. Sorry, it's cold. It's cold out here. It's making me a little sniffly. And the bathroom has the most specific requirements. There are grab bars around the toilet, and there has to be a certain amount of room where the toilet's situated. Although there's two different kind of forms. There's like a roll-up type where you can roll up alongside, and then there's a transfer type where you roll to the front and you grab the grab bars and kind of get yourself over. So there's two variants, and some people might need a roll-up if it's harder for them to get off of their wheelchairs, or others can use a transfer type. Same with shower. The shower, a transfer shower has basically a seat and bars in it, and you roll alongside of it and you basically pull yourself into the seat. A roll-in shower is much larger. I think it's like 62 inches long by like 40 inches deep or something, and you can actually drive with a wheelchair that you don't want to soak, or maybe you do want to soak your, I don't know. You can drive right inside, and so there's two different variants. Usually the kitchen has to have a certain amount of counter space that you can roll under, so you can basically just sit at the counter and work. And then kitchen sink and faucet usually have to have like really good clearance, so you usually have to use special drains, or like things that kind of retract the drain so that it's out of the way of knees and such. Sometimes there's padding you put on the drains so they aren't a knee bumping hazard. So those are the main things that make, there's lots more to it. Basically has to do with having things reachable and handleable. There's also, it's common to have, to kind of make things completely accessible and safe for a variety of reasons that people might need that. It's common to put the strobe light fire alarms in those, in a ADA compliant structure, so that somebody who can't hear would see it. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. And I do build ADA builds on request, so it's not too hard to adapt the wider ones. I do build wider houses, like 10-foot houses. So yeah, good question. That's pretty much it. Gosh, well, so next time, I think I want to talk about trailers, but there's some other things I want to hit on. Roofing, I think, would be really fun to do. Have some roofing coming up here that I can do on Ask Zill Live. And I don't know, you tell me. You guys ask me, that's what it's all about, really. So if you want to see more of these and some of the interior tours of my tiny houses, then consider subscribing to my YouTube channel if you don't already. And that way I think you kind of get the notification through your system if you have that turned on. Yeah, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I'm Abel Zill. I'm the founder of Zill Vardos, a tiny house building company here in Olympia, Washington, and I am trying to build tiny houses that fit people, that work well, that feel right, that look good. So that's kind of my main shtick. I'm planning to keep building them for quite some time, so keep coming around, keep asking me questions, keep hiring me to build tiny houses, and we'll keep it going through all the hurdles of being a small builder in the country that's dominated by industrialized corporate building companies. So let's keep it real. I think that's what the tiny house movement is partially about, is kind of keeping it real. So yeah. Oh, Emi Matsushita asked, how are the roof kits coming along? That's going to take me some time. So I'm super excited about that idea, but it'll take me a little while. I got to get them just right so they're easy for people to use that don't have, that aren't boat builders. Yeah, so thanks for joining me. We will see you next time. My name is Abel Zill, and have a good Sunday. Bye, guys.